Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Jim Olson, Assistant Executive Director for the National Tile Contractors Association, and I want to thank you all for attending today's webinar. The title of the webinar is Navigating the Adhesives Maze. Most manufacturers offer a wide variety of cement-based adhesives for installing tile and stone. Knowing the differences between these offerings and which type is best suited for a particular installation can be confusing. The presentation addresses the question of why we have so many adhesives, provides an overview of the different types and their uses, and guidelines for determining which is most appropriate for your installation. Our sponsor for this presentation is LATICRETE, and before we continue, I do have some business to take care of. Today's webinar will be muted. Please use the questions area on your computer to type in any questions. We will answer your questions at the end of this presentation. All of our webinars are archived and available to watch at any time after the webinars are presented. They either can be watched from an archived version off of our webinar or on our YouTube page. Please go to YouTube and watch these anytime you would like, and please click the subscribe button. That would be great. I'm going to provide my email address on the chat screen when we begin. Please email your requests to me, and I'll make sure you get the archived version. If the audio on your computer is poor, call the number on your invite and listen on your phone. All right, here we go. Today's speaker, Jonathan Scott, is the Senior Product Manager in Adhesives for LATICRETE International. Jonathan has been with LATICRETE since 2005 and has served as Product Manager for both the grout and adhesive product lines. He has over 25 years of experience in the construction supplies industry. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you for giving me this opportunity, and thank you to the NTCA for all you do for the industry, and especially events like this to educate people on various aspects of our industry. Jim did a great job of kind of summarize what I'm going to speak about today. Just a quick show you the agenda, what I'd like to cover. As Jim said, I really wanted to address the confusion and questions that people have about adhesives, because there are so many cementitious adhesives, and there is a lot of confusion of what the differences are and when and where various adhesives should be used. So I'm going to be talking about modified and non-modified, some about the ANSI performance standards, thin bed and large and heavy tile, talk a little bit about some of these special applications, and then at the end of just some few summarizing remarks about helping you choose the right product and what I see some of the future trends for adhesives. So these questions we get constantly. Our salespeople get them. Distributors have these questions. Installers. Why do we have so many? What's the difference? And which one should I use? And the reasons for the confusion I've kind of summarized here. Aside from the sheer number of products, there have been other changes as well, which I think contribute to some of the confusion. There have been some changes in terms of terminology and new terminology. So things like medium bed mortars are now large and heavy tile mortars. Large thin porcelain tile, which is also a newer product, is now gauge porcelain tile and gauge porcelain tile panels. So there's terminology differences. There are new technologies. Another factor is that manufacturers tend to segment their lines differently from one another, and I think as someone who's looking at between different products, that can be confusing too. At times, it can comparing products among different lines. And then there are industry trends, as I said, the larger and larger tiles, the gauge porcelain tiles, so newer products, and then we also have some newer performance standards, both in ANSI and ISO. So all these things make something that is can be confusing even more confusing. And it's just a slide to show you how these things adds up. So these are the kind of some of the major categories and performance standards, and you can see between thin bed and large and heavy tile, you have rapids, you have all different performance standards, you have adhesives that are made for special applications, for glass tile. And then if you're a distributor or you warehouse adhesives, then you've got gray and white for most all of these, and even different sized bags. So if you've ever been in a distributor's warehouse, you'll be very familiar with what I'm suggesting here. So first, I want to talk about modified and non-modified mortars. And there has been a progression in the industry with these products, starting out, years ago with dry set or non-modified mortars, and then we came to introduced modified mortars, and the first modified mortars were adding a liquid latex. This is about 50 years ago. And now all of our products, or most newer products, are all one product. So the latex is already mixed in with the powder. And I wanted to mention that because even though the dry set, there are still dry set mortars sold and used for some applications, there are some latex additives still out there that people still prefer, usually for tradition or whatever. That's what they grew up on. So manufacturers still supply them. So that's, as you can see, is just another area of why we have so many of these products. So the first generation of dry set mortar, and this is going back to beginning of time practically, with very simple blends of sand and cement, non-modified products. There is an ANSI standard for this, which is ANSI A118-1, and these products now are no longer site mixes. There are site mixes that are still used, but these products are now available pre-blended. But they have some advantages, but they are limited in terms of where they can be used. So they're primarily for interior over concrete, so with very porous substrates, for ceramic tiles and so forth. The benefits, the pre-blended ones, they're much more consistent than the old site mixes, and they have a much smoother consistency, and of course they are economical. So the second generation, this is when latex was introduced as an additive to the dry set to form a modified adhesive. And once you do that, you greatly expand where these products can be used, with the type of tiles, with the type of substrates. The strengths go way up. And this is just a little snapshot to show you the difference between a non-modified and a modified. So as you can see on the right, modifieds can be used exterior, porcelain tile. They can be used over a wide variety of substrates, including plywood, plastic and laminate and vinyl and so forth. So greatly expands where these products can be used and where tile can be installed. Then the third generation was replacing the liquid additive with a dry form of latex. So now you buy a bag of thin set, a multi-purpose thin set, and that there's no more mixing in of a liquid additive. It's already just mixed with the water only, and the latex is already contained within the product. So briefly, I want to touch next on the ANSI standards. There are several ANSI standards for cement adhesives. Again, the ANSI is the American National Standards Institute. And you will see the ANSI standards referenced in specifications and listed on product data sheets and so forth. And they help you by giving you information as far as where products can be used and for what applications and so forth. So ANSI 8.1, 118.1, as I said, this is for the basically the sand and cement blend, so the most basic forms of adhesives. Followed by ANSI A118.4. Now this is the standard, the original standard for a modified dry set cement mortar. And as I said earlier, these products, the modified ones, can go over a much greater variety of substrates, more challenging substrates, used with porcelain tile, etc., and used in exterior applications. And finally, the newest standard, which is ANSI A118.15, there was a need to distinguish higher performing mortars from within the category of modified mortars. And so the industry came up with the new standard, A118.15, for improved modified dry set mortars. And this provides another level of classification, and targets for this type of mortar include large format tiles, glass tile, submerged application, exterior veneers, and so forth. So this is the highest standard for a modified or polymer modified dry set mortar. Now, in addition, I just wanted to touch on one other, which is ANSI A118.11, and this is specifically a standard for modified mortars which are used over exterior glue plywood. And then we have also some additional designations, which you can see on the slide here. So if you see a product that it lists itself as A118.15, you may see A118.15 EFT, and the E in that case would mean extended open time, and F is for fast setting or rapid. T means the product is non-sag, and H is the newest one of these, came out a couple of years ago, and that is specifically for large and heavy tile. So again, these are descriptors that you will see used with the specific ANSI standard, and there are test standards for each one of these as well. So next, I want to talk about thin bed adhesives versus large and heavy tile adhesives. Thin bed adhesives, and these are really the older products primarily. These are for tiles that basically anything that is not defined as a large and heavy tile. So tiles that have no side longer than 15 inches, for example. And as I said, the primarily older products, because of the increase in tile sizes over the last several years, we've seen this more and more demand for large and heavy tile mortars. So most of the products that are thin bed only were developed prior to that time. So large and heavy tile, as I said, increasingly popular. Many years ago, an 8x8 tile was considered to be a large tile. Then 12x12s, and then on, and we see the very large tiles that we have today. And some customers report that 70% of their sales now are for tile that qualifies as large and heavy tile. So it's been a major trend in the industry. And with that trend, there have been more and more new products, new adhesives that have come out that are applicable for large and heavy tile. So large and heavy tile require a thicker bed of mortar underneath them. It makes sense if you think you had a slightly warped tile, for instance. You could have a void or a hollow into the tile that would most likely result in a broken or cracked tile. So these large and heavy tile mortars are designed to be built up and to support that tile without slumping and often without sagging. If this has been one of the challenges in the industry, if you've been on job sites, a lot of installers are still using thin beds for large and heavy tile, but that's changing as more and more of us become educated on the need to use large and heavy tiles for those applications. This gives you an idea of why you need these materials. A thin set, when you build it up beyond 3/8, will shrink when it's curing, and the large and heavy tile mortars are designed so they do not do that. And they have non-sag quality, so this is a rather extreme example, but obviously for large heavy tile on a wall or any tile on a wall, these products are what we call non-sag. So there is this is from the TCNA Handbook about the definition of large and heavy tile, when you need to use a large and heavy tile adhesive. And it's really 3 criteria. So one I mentioned earlier, if the tile has one side that is greater than 15 inches, you need to use an LHT mortar. Heavy tiles, which are defined as a tile that weighs more than 5 pounds square foot, and then for tiles with an ungauged thickness. And important to note what these are not used for as well as what they're used for, and that is they're not for truing or leveling substrates or the work of others. So as I mentioned earlier, there have been, one of the sources of confusion is changing terminology and so forth. So in this case, the former term for large and heavy tile mortar was medium bed mortar. A few years ago, that was changed to a dry set mortar for large and heavy tile. So you may still see the term medium bed used in the industry, but the new term is large and heavy tile mortar. Excuse me. And then we've also changed the bond coat thickness. It used to be up to 3/4, and the new standard is up to 1/2 inch. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the specialty products as well, because there are also, in addition, products for these special applications, and one of them is for glass tile adhesives. Glass tile adhesives are usually non-sag. They are polymer fortified or modified. Usually they have an ultra-white finish because the tile itself is translucent, and they can be used in submerged applications such as swimming pools. Important to note that there are other adhesives other than glass tile adhesives which can be used with glass tile, but glass tile adhesives are usually formulated for this specifically, and primarily because of the color. So some of our newer technologies is lightweight and sand-free options. Lightweight, more and more products are coming out that are lightweight. Obviously, it's easier for the installer. A traditional bag is 50 pounds, and lightweights are usually between 30 and 25 pounds, so about half the weight. Saves on shipping too, and most have a little different feel too. Many have a much smoother and creamy feel than a traditional cement adhesive with sand in it. And then also silica sand-free products are coming out now. And these also are usually very smooth consistency, and they also reduce the exposure to respirable silica, which is an increasing concern in the industry. A little bit about gauged porcelain tile. This is another relatively new product. You can see on the slide just how large these panels can be. They offer a really unique look with a clean look with minimal grout joints. They can be as large as 5 to 10 feet and are used on walls and floors. And it's a great look, as I said, and gaining in popularity, but there are some challenges in installing this material. It's a much different installation than traditional tile, just because these panels are so large and so thin. Panels in thickness are usually 3 millimeters, 5 millimeters, and up, maybe 6.5. So very thin material. And because of that, in terms of an adhesive, the coverage is absolutely critical. And if you think especially on a floor with a tile so thin, you really want as close to 100% coverage as you can get. As if you have any voids underneath that tile, and it can easily lead to a cracking or even punctures. So there is a very specific method for applying an adhesive to these products and to the substrate to ensure that you get this 100% coverage. In terms of an adhesive, the goal is to have a product that is loose enough to have ridges, so you can trowel it and preserve your ridges, but also an adhesive that enables you to easily collapse those ridges when you embed the panel, so that you'll get the maximum coverage. So most manufacturers have specific products within their lines. There are also a few products that are specifically for gauged porcelain tile panels, but just another consideration for you if you're looking to install this type of material, that there are materials out there that are designed for this application. Also, long open time is critical. As you can see from the slide, I'll just go back. If you can see on the slide here that the panel that this man is showing you, the thinset has been applied to the panel and to that substrate. You can see that the ridges are parallel. You can also imagine that it takes a little bit of time to apply all of that adhesive, and sometimes you'll have a crew of 4 guys, maybe 2, applying it to the floor or the wall, and then 2 more applying it to the panel. And open time obviously is critical, because you don't want that to skin over before you have a chance to embed it. So open time is also a key attribute for an adhesive for this application. So finally, in terms of what people ask, well, what tile or stone, what tile adhesive should I be using? And really, my recommendation is to first look at the tile or stone size, because if you can determine that you need a large and heavy tile mortar, for example, that in most product lines will cut your choices in half. And then from there, once you've determined whether you need a thin bed or a large and heavy tile product, then you can go and look at what is your specific tile, what is the substrate, any specific applications such as submerged glass, traffic, what type of warranty you're looking for. But that's kind of the progression that I would suggest in terms of making your decision about which adhesive to use. And bear in mind that many of the large and heavy tile mortars, and the newer ones, can also be used for thin bed applications. So you wouldn't want to use a thin bed mortar for a large and heavy tile application, but most large and heavy tile mortars can also be used as a thin bed. Another observation is that most premium large and heavy tile mortars are suitable for the majority of most any installation. So there are large and heavy tile mortars that meet A1-1815. Again, that's the highest ANSI standard that can be used for both thin bed and large and heavy tile, that have non-sag characteristics, that can be used with glass tile and submerged, and even are lightweight and sand free. So that is an option as well. There are multi-purpose that are true, you know, almost all-in-one products. In terms of the future, this is an easy one. Obviously, older technologies will continue to be phased out in the new. And for instance, over the past several years, you've seen a lot of the latex additives, obviously an older technology. They are still in the market because some installers have kind of grown up with them and they still like to use them, but they are fading away. We are seeing more versatile products, as I just mentioned in the last slides, more products that can do more things, and also even modular systems are coming out that enable you to use kind of a base and install various additives to create the adhesive that you need on site. So that's all I had today, but I'd be very happy to try and address any questions that any of you had.
Jonathan, great job. Lots of information. It doesn't look like, let's see here. Here's a statement, a question. I find there's a lot of confusion when contractors are installing large, heavy tile in conjunction with a mesh backing or over membranes like Curti Ditra. For example, someone intended to remove a mesh backing on a stone for what they felt would be better adhesion. How would you generally guide folks for whom there's not necessarily a single right answer? Did that make sense?
Yeah, depending on a specific tile, I really would, for that, I think where he's going, I would contact the tile supplier for their recommendations of what kind of a product that may in fact need, depending on what the product is, you may actually need an epoxy for that application. But
Yeah,
I would do a mock-up.
I agree with you, Jonathan. When it's a mesh back, that mesh is on there for a reason, and not all mesh backs bond the same way. You would definitely want to check with the distributor and the manufacturer of the product and get their recommendation. And really, one of the things I think Jonathan said in here today, everybody, and I want to really make sure everyone hears this, but manufacturers' recommendations, they supersede all methods and standards of our industry. So you definitely want to get an answer from the manufacturer of a product or the setting material if you have questions. All right, let's see what else we have here. Any thoughts about glass tile and the related issues to glass tile?
I'm not sure really the question. As I said, there are products specifically formulated for glass, and you want something that has the performance, usually A1-1815. Color is important, and that's why a lot of the glass tile specific products are usually a bright white, so that in consideration of the translucent nature of most glass, and non-sag.
So again, Jonathan, I think really it's talk to your distributor and manufacturer of the product, because a lot of them will have different backings on them. you need to be careful in regards to troweling behind them. Sometimes you need to flat trowel after you trowel on your adhesive. You flat trowel it so you're not going to get trowel lines.
Good point. Yes.
It's very important to get all that information before you start selecting a thin set or a setting material. Get it from the manufacturer and the distributor. Would you agree with me?
I would, yes. Good point about back troweling it and knocking down your ridges.
Yeah, there's a lot with glass that you just have to know. It's a unique situation all on its own. So definitely. Let's see. Should manufacturers state the minimum bed thickness required to allow sufficient movement to occur at movement joints? Not sure I understand this one.
I'm not sure I do.
So
can you elaborate on that?
So the thin, he's not elaborating on it. I'm trying to read into it. So real quickly, so the thin set, the bed thickness, movement joints are put in for the movement of the product, you know, not up and down so much, but side to side. And I don't know minimum bed thickness. I don't know how to answer that question for him. Richard Bowman, if you're still on here and would like to clarify your question a little bit, I would appreciate it. All right. Is this webinar AIA approved, Jonathan?
No.
No? Okay. All right. So this is not an AIA CEU program. Sorry about that. And how about this? Sometimes this person sees the same manufacturer have 2 or more mortars that comply to the exact same ANSI spec. Would it then be a matter of texture feel as to which one would be right for the job?
Well, usually there are other, I mean, for instance, there are a lot of A118.4 and a lot of A118.15 mortars, but you look, you know, there are other considerations, things like non-sag, open time. One can have, you know, higher strengths still within that standard. So lightweight, you really have to look within the, probably look at the product data sheet, because there probably are other considerations other than the ANSI standard.
And also, Jonathan, all major manufacturers of setting materials do have what should I say, a technical line they can call and ask their questions. And
yes, important. Thank you, Jim. Yes, you can always call their tech service department with any questions about differences or suitability for a specific application.
If you're looking at 2 or 3 thin sets from the same manufacturer that you think would work, I would contact them and let's get their input. They might ask you a few questions that'll help answer that for you. So definitely contact the technical department of any manufacturer setting materials if you have questions. All right, so let's see here. So here's a attendee. We use glass tile in saltwater pools. Are there any differences with glass mortar versus a saltwater environment?
No, no.
All right, no differences.
We're good with both. Yeah, we're good.
All right. How can movement joints function without sufficient shear movement? I'm not quite understanding these questions real well.
No.
This goes along with you know, the earlier one about movement.
You want to make sure you achieve proper coverage.
Right. You know, when earlier, Richard, when you asked about minimum bed thickness, I think Jonathan answered in here about going up to a ½ an inch.
For the large heavy tile, yeah.
For large heavy tile. Regular thin set goes how thick, Jonathan?
3/8.
I think anyhow.
Yeah, 3/8.
But really, The thin set itself, now that is fortified, has movement in it, and we'll take some of that movement in there. But movement joints are made are to be put in to help with that movement if the subsurface is moving at a different amount than, say, your tile or your thin set. I don't even know how to answer this question. I'm not sure I clearly understand it yet. I'm going to jump around here a little bit. Which LATICRETE product do you recommend for porcelain panels over Hygroband board for shower walls?
Probably 257 titanium.
All right. Is there an ANSI for mortars that help mitigate efflorescence in exterior applications?
An ANSI standard?
Yeah, I don't think there's an ANSI standard for that. ANSI will tell you to use a waterproof membrane or
A11815.
yeah. These are all good questions. They're just not that easy to answer. Is bond strength important and how do we evaluate?
Well, bond strength is a component of all of the ANSI standards. So it's very important. And if you look within the highest bond strength is obviously with an ANSI 11815 mortar. So when in doubt, I would say, use a 11815. That's going to give you the highest bond strength.
How can movement joints function without a sufficient shear movement?
That's the same question?
Yeah, so movement joints, I'm just not understanding where he's going with movement joints. Same person, how much creep can occur in adhesives?
Oh my goodness gracious. I think, with movement joints, you want to achieve the appropriate coverage, which would be 95% for wet or exterior and 80% for interior.
Right, that's the most important.
And then the right specified gap for the movement joint.
Hey, Richard Bowman, my email address is on the chat screen. And if you would send me these questions, I'll get with Jonathan and we'll try to get you better answers on these. I'm sorry. Is Multimax Light sufficient adhesive for smooth back thin porcelain panels?
Yes, yes. We have several products that we recommend for using for gauge porcelain tile panels. And Multimax Light and 257 titanium and 254 platinum are all very good for that application.
When bonding gauge porcelain panels, is there an additional curing time that you have to consider?
It is longer. Again, I would also consult with that tile manufacturer.
Yeah, I would go both ways on that, Jonathan. The tile manufacturer and the setting material manufacturer. Some manufacturers do have, some ideas of how long they want it to set before people walk on it for thin gauge porcelain tile. So I would just check all your options, make sure you're, covering your bases.
Yeah, we typically say 72 hours for heavy, but
all right, so here's Richard Bowman again. We require movement joints, but do the adhesives enable sufficient movement to occur for the joints to close without shear occurring? So if you're closing the joints with thin set or grout all the way to the walls, I can guarantee you don't have any movement joint in there. You have no room for sufficient movement. So a movement joint is to give you room for the growth and shrinkage of that substrate or the tile as opposed to each other.
Yeah. I agree. There should be no thin set or grout in that joint.
Yeah, you do not want to fill a movement joint solid with grout or thin set, whether it's against a wall or a cut movement joint. So. All right, let's see here. ANSI bond strength is a minimum, but manufacturers' minimums vary. So does the greatest strength mean the best product?
Yeah, not always, but it is a good indicator. If I don't know exactly what if I'm answering his question or her question. As I said, there are other qualities or features of a thin set aside from the ANSI and depending on your installation, there are others qualities that can be very important as well.
All right. So let's see here. Refer to ANSI A108.19 and mortar manufacturers for GPTP. Oh, he's helping answer your question. So anyone looking for information from ANSI on gauge porcelain tile and panels, please go to A108.19 and the mortar manufacturer section should be able to answer that for you. Well, I don't know that we answered everyone greatly, Jonathan, but
we tried.
Thanks all of them. And if anyone wants to send me an email and restate your question, we will definitely love to get back to you. I want to thank everyone for attending today. We had a great audience. Please look forward to our March 26th webinar coming up. You'll get an invite soon. And I want to thank Jonathan for all the great information and the time he's taken to present this for us. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And please feel free to email me those questions.
I will. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye.